Hello, welcome to yesterday's Airlines. We've got an extra release announcement ranking video to do this week because Aviation400 have just announced their April announcements. I last did a video for Aviation400 back in December because they tend to announce more like every quarter rather than every month. And at the time I said that those models would likely be out March sort of time. Actually, they've only just kind of come out now around April, but there have been a lot of new AV400s out in the last couple of weeks. This month's announcements are actually massive for Aviation400. There are 25 new models in this set, which is a big group for AV400. So that's showing that they are making headway and are growing their brand. Now, for those of you who aren't too familiar with the Aviation400, they are connected to in-flight and they are producing largely a selection of wide-body aircraft, often with quite a Asian and European feel to them, but increasingly they are producing American material as well. They have an increasing range of wide-body molds. They've got a relatively new A330-900. They've also got A330ceos and A340s too. They've got A350s, which is probably was their most used mold until recently. They've got the 900 and the 1000. They've got an amazing A380, and they're moving into the Boeings. They have a 777-300 ER, and they have 787s as well. They also do have some A320s, but they have only released a very small number of those, and there aren't any in this set, which is, that's quite interesting. I'm a little surprised at that. They've only released 3, I think, so far, and to be honest, the subject matter wasn't particularly interesting. But I did get one of those, and it was very nice. In fact, I think maybe I got 2 of them, and it's well worth checking out the review that I did because it's quite a competitive A320 mold. Now, AV400, for those uninitiated, are probably most famous for the beacon lights, which are on top of their models and on the underneath as well. A little jewel, that's a really cool feature, looks very nice. They are also now probably even more famous for the magnetic undercarriage that they are introducing. They are the only brand in 400 scale that have developed detachable magnetic gear. Their models have always come with a plastic stand, but now you can truly display them gears up. And until recently, that magnetic gear was only on the A380s. In December, or late last year, the 787 mold was introduced with that detachable landing gear, and I thought that looked quite good on the 787. There are some outstanding A350s which are supposed to have the detachable gear, and their A330neo also has detachable landing gear as well. And it now appears that they're effectively rolling out their magnetic detachable gear to all of their models because every single one of the releases in this set comes with detachable magnetic landing gear. So if that's something that excites you, then this is going to be a pretty cool set. So interesting to see what that looks like on the A350 molds that are coming out soon with it on, and there are more in this set. I think it's going to be added to the 777s as well, but they haven't as yet announced any 777s with detachable gear. I don't think it'll be on the A320s. I think they're just too small. And as I say, it looks pretty good. It's certainly a big difference to any of the other brands that are around. Now, I've been a strong supporter of AV400 and I really like the models that they've been making. I do have to, however, point out that they have recently had some issues with over polishing of the molds, which has led to some slightly unusual looking mold noses on the A380s. I've seen it on some A350s and 777s as well. So they've got to be careful with that. I really like the brand, but I don't appreciate, stubby noses. So it really does ruin the model. So they really need to be careful and not hurt their good name really with some sloppy QC. But broadly, I have to say Aviation400 are one of my favourite brands, and they've been producing some really good high quality models, and I'm pretty excited by their release set. Okay, anyway, that's a little bit of a background on AV400, and now we're going to get in and check out these release announcements and see what I think about them. Before I do that, don't forget to chuck a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Always appreciate that. Check me out at Instagram and Facebook at Airlines, and of course yesterdaysairlines.com, where I've reviewed quite a lot of AV400 molds, individual models, A350s, A330s, and 777s and 787s and such. But also I've included them in various detail mold ratings and all that kind of stuff. So there's always tons of great material at the site and plenty to do with this brand. But let's get on and see what they are releasing in the next 3 to 4 months. So we've got 25 models, which is quite a big set, as I say, but we'll try and get through this quite quickly. A lot of these have been released by other brands already, so I don't need to necessarily discuss the liveries too much, I feel. First up, we've got a trio of A330 Neos. Now, I can't say that I loved the AV400 A330 Neo mold, but I do know that they are making some modifications to it, so it'll be interesting to see what these look like when they come out. My issues with it mainly surrounded the placement of the nose gear and the form of the nose itself. But this month we have 3 models that have been announced here. First one up is F Whiskey Tango Tango Echo. It's in the Airbus house colours, and it's got these extra titles which say airspace, and it's got a new cabin experience. That's the titles that it's got on the back of it. So this is effectively the same prototype scheme as has been made previously by Phoenix and jcwings, and also there's another AV400 version of this, but this time round it's got different titles on the back of it, and it's actually the same scheme that has been made previously by Phoenix. Actually, I've already owned the jcwings and the other AV400 version actually, but I don't own the Phoenix one, which is the same as this one with the airspace new cabin experience text on the back. It's effectively the same scheme from my perspective as the others. I can't say I'm overly excited by it, and I'm going to put this one in to workhorse, partly also because I'm not so certain about the mold. Next up, we've got a Cebu Pacific A330-900 Neo. Cebu Pacific's obviously from the Philippines. The reg of this one is RPC3900. This has also been made previously. It's been made by geminijets. I think that release was specific for that market, for the Philippine market. It came out in 2022. It actually looks really good because I do like their mold, and they did a good job on that model. Phoenix has also made the same reg of aircraft, but not the same one as this one in terms of delivery, because this one does have this 25th anniversary sticker on the front of it. I have to say Phoenix perhaps got the green on the back fuselage a bit too dark as well. Once again, this, I don't think it'll be quite as good as the Gemini version because I'm not certain about the mold, a little bit uncertain about how that's going to be looking in the future, so keep an eye out to see how they look. This one's been made before as well, and I think I will also workhorse this one. Now, the third and last of the A330-900s is the Delta Team USA bus N411DX, and this has just been announced by Phoenix. It has already been made by Gemini. So we talked about this model a few times previously. This will be the third version, and I have to say, again, because of my uncertainty about the mod, I don't think it's going to beat the other 2 versions, especially because Phoenix have modified their mod a little bit recently. So again, I think I'll put this one in workhorse. I'm sitting on the fence somewhat with these AV400 Neos because I'm just not completely sold on the mold. But it'll be interesting to see what it looks like. They could be really good, but neither of these, or none of these 3 subjects are particularly exciting me, I must admit. Okay, so moving into the Airbus A350s. Now, I've always really liked the AV400 A350 mold. It makes up the majority of my A350s, or the A350s in my collection. In detail, it isn't as good as the NG, but generally, I feel that it's still an excellent mold, and it's certainly better than the other molds from Phoenix and jcwings Gemini. So I really like it. There have been some issues in terms of wing fit with some of the releases recently, and that's been a little bit annoying. It'll be interesting to see what the magnetic landing gear adds to the mold and whether it improves it. There's quite a few in this set, which is cool. It's good to see more of these A350s. Again, a lot of these have been made before or been announced by other brands, but that's not necessarily a problem, as you will see. First up is an example of this. It's an Aeroflot A350. The reg is RA73154. So this one, even though there have been 4 previous Aeroflot A350s, including a very nice example made by Aviation400 themselves, none of them have carried the Russian registration prefix. They've all had that VP or VQ reg. So yeah, I've talked a bit about my uncertainty in this, in the sense that I'm very much not a supporter of Russia's actions in Ukraine. And the only reason these aircraft have the RA reg is due to that. But nonetheless, it is different and it's interesting in comparison to the other releases. NG have also made an Aeroflot A350 in this scheme, and made that in 2021. So it's been 3 years since anyone has made an Aeroflot A350, and this is kind of what I mean by Aviation400 this release set. They are making models, sometimes they're repetitious a little bit, but they're slightly different, and there hasn't been another release in recent times, or there certainly hasn't been another high quality release in recent times. So I'm minded to put this one up into high flyer because it's got that little bit of edge, that little bit of difference. Now, next up, we've got a couple of Cathay Pacifics, and I don't say that often enough, and that's because partly Cathay are quite litigious when it comes to licensing. But if there's a brand that doesn't care about that, then Aviation400 is it. They just don't seem to care about that aspect in any way. And this month we've got a couple of Cathay A350-900s, BLQ Alpha and B Lima Romeo Sierra. These are not, in a long shot, the first time Cathay has made A350-900s. They've previously made quite a few, at least 4. And I own one of those already, again, and it's a really nice model. These ones, of course, will come with the detachable gear, though, so that is a different factor. The only other brand that really often makes Cathay is jcwings, but again, we haven't seen any new Cathay A350s, I think, for a while. It's been a long time, so it's good to see these ones coming up. I think it was 2020 was the last time that we had one from Aviation400, and I think that may be the last time there was a Cathay A350 at all. So it's been 4 years since there has been one. I imagine Cathay is still super popular. These should be, again, interesting with the new magnetic landing gear, and I'm going to put one of these up into high flyer. I'll put the other one into workhorse. Next up, we've got a couple of models which are, inevitable because everyone is releasing them. It's the Delta Airlines A350s wearing these special schemes. I talked about these a lot recently on, I think, probably my last video, the Phoenix video, because they've announced them. They're bound to get made by NG. They're probably bound to get made by Gemini as well. And it's kind of ironic because obviously it illustrates that Delta legal issue has come to nothing, and no one cares about that because everyone's still releasing Delta models. If anything, there are more Delta models around now than there were before that, since Phoenix and Aviation400 are both moving into that space too. Anyway, we've got here the Los Angeles 28 scheme for the Olympics, and we've got the Team USA scheme. They're both excellent liveries, as I talked about beforehand. It'll be really cool to see how they look on the Aviation400 A350, which is certainly substantially better than the Phoenix A350, which is the only other ones, I think, which have been announced to date. So I've got no reason not to put these two into high flyer as well. I both think they'll be excellent models, but they are being made by competitors, so just be aware of that. The last A350-900 from this set is another Sichuan Airlines aircraft. I seem to regularly be talking about Sichuan Airlines A350s, and this is another new one, which I didn't realise existed. The reg is B32G2, which I quite like actually as a reg too. And this one's got another version of the Panda scheme. This one's got 3 pandas sitting together at the front of the aircraft. So they're all quite similar, but they're all different as well. I like the schemes. They're colourful, they're fun, there are lots of them, and they're all slightly different. The only annoying thing is I could keep on finding space for them in my collection, and they are quite large aircraft. But I'm going to put this one up in supersonic. Hopefully they do a good job on it. I've already got several Aviation400 Sichuan Airlines A350s, so this one would go nicely with ones that I already have. Moving into the larger variant of the 350, we've got the Series 1000s, and there are 4 of those this month. First one up is House Colours, FWMIL, but this one again, slightly different to the model that they've made before, because there have been quite a few versions of FWMIL made by a few brands actually. Aviation400 have made at least 2 of these previously, and this is their 3rd, but there are others from NG and jcwings and Phoenix, so there are plenty of them around, but the scheme is slightly different. This one has a sticker on the bottom which is related to 40 years Stade Toulousain, and I looked up what that was, and it appears to be a rugby club in Toulouse. So, you know, it doesn't mean much to me. The sticker is on the bottom of the aircraft, so it's not really especially visible either, I have to say. It doesn't particularly excite me, this one, I have to say, because it's so similar to ones that have been made beforehand. But again, it will come with detachable landing gear, so if that floats your boat, you may be more interested in it. I've already got an earlier version. I don't feel the need to get another one really here, I don't think. I'm going to put this one into Workhorse. We've also got a couple of cafes in the Series 1000s, and again, once again, Avi400 has been here before. This is not the first time they've made Series 1000 Cathay Pacifics Avi400. They've made, I think, 5 previous versions, so it's relatively common. But what is interesting is that how few Series 1000 A350s are around, because NG's kind of forgotten it's even got the model and doesn't really use it. So Phoenix has also made one before, or in fact they made 3 before, and jcwings has made a couple as well, but that's both, all of those releases are quite old. So again, I think it's good that Avi400 are producing more of these, because I think there is a market for them, definitely. The regs here are B, LXM and LXQ, so they're different regs that you can start filling out your Cathay A350 1000 fleet. But again, I think there's definitely a market. There's not a lot of these around. I'll put one in High Flyer and one in Workhorse again. And the last Series 1000 this month is Japan Airlines. Now, I've talked about this scheme quite a bit, and there have been seemingly quite a lot of releases of A350 1000s for JAL. This one's JA02 Whiskey Juliet. The other ones have all been 01 Whiskey Juliet. But not all of them have got to market yet, I have to say. There are a couple of special scheme variant versions of this one. One's got A350 1000 titles on the back. This one does not. This is just a standard scheme, and I don't think much of the JAL standard scheme. There is an NG version floating around of the standard scheme colours, so yeah, you know, it's going to be the same as this one. There's also a Phoenix version floating around in that scheme as well. The jcwings one, unsurprisingly, hasn't actually seen the light of day yet, even though it was the first one that was announced. I'm just going to put this one into Workhorse. You know, I don't have a lot of interest in the JAL A350 1000, and there are several around already. Okay, no, now that's coming out the side for the Airbus products, but there are a lot of Boeings in this set, and arguably these are more interesting than the Airbuses, partly because this set of announcements marks the debut of both the 787-8 and the 787-10 molds from Avi400. Now, presumably they will look just as good as the 9 because they're just shorter and longer, respectively, but it is great to see them coming to market. And the 8s especially are really looking like a solid set. NG has obviously recently had a 787-8 as well, but I have to say I've not been particularly excited by a lot of their 787 releases. They've tended to be quite samey and not particularly unique or interesting. So it's good to have some more competition, I guess, in that space that can do something perhaps a little more interesting than Zip Air and Scoot. So this first 4 actually are a really good indicator, I think, of what is possible with a 787-8. First up is a Boeing Company House Colours N787BX. Now this has been made a lot, but it's never been made well, which is interesting. There are old House Colours versions from Phoenix and Hogan and Dragon. They're all really old, and none of them are especially good. This one, I mean, there really haven't been barely any House Colours 787s made in years. The last one, I think, was jcwings, and they made one in 2017, and that's not even this scheme, it's a different scheme. So It's been a long time, and it's well overdue to have a modern 787 in the house colours. So this one, I think, is going to be really good. I'm going to put this one up in supersonic, and it's a model that I very well may get. Equally as exciting is Air Tanzania 5H Tango Charlie Golf. There has never been an Air Tanzania 787. It is a really nice scheme, and exactly the sort of thing I want to see from manufacturers doing something interesting. It's got this cool draft on the tail, wings of Kilimanjaro. It's a nice scheme. I really like it, and I really like the fact that they're making it as someone's making it. I think this one will be popular, and I love African Airlines anyway. It's going to be difficult for me to come up with a reason to buy it, but I think it's an excellent choice, and it's clearly, again, supersonic. And a reminder, all of these are going to come with the detachable landing gear, which looks really good on their 787s. The next two are early 787s, or at least early customers. So All Nippon is the first one, JA820 Alpha. And there have been, again, a lot of All Nippon 787-8s, over 30 in fact. But again, a lot of them aren't very good. There's versions by YRD Models and Hogan, and some old releases from jcwings. In fact, there's a lot of Hogan and Phoenix, and they're all on really not great molds. And if you're looking through for a good 787 mold in this release set of all these All Nippon 787-8s, you're struggling to find them. The only one that really stands out as being a particularly good mold is the NG that was released, I think, last year. But and there's a jcwings version too. But both of those on the later molds are in different schemes. They're in that Future Promise green livery, not in the standard colour. So there's very little actually out there which is a quality mould 787-8. So again, I think this is a really good release, and I'm not going to supersonic it, but I'll put it into high flyer. I think it's going to be a really good release, and it's good to see some action for 787-8 because it's been largely ignored. There have been a lot of 9s, not that many 8s. The last 787-8 is China Southern, and I actually thought when I first saw this was a fantasy model. The reg is Beast 2725, but actually doing a bit of investigation, it isn't. It doesn't wear the actual China Southern 787 scheme with the big dove wings on it. Instead, it's in the standard colours. But looking back, the first Dreamliner that was scheduled for delivery to China Southern, which was this aircraft, actually wore this livery. But it never was delivered in it. And so when I can see pictures from April 2011 of this aircraft stored without engines, as so many 787s were for some time, waiting to be delivered in this scheme. Now, the only thing that I'd say negatively against this is it was never, I don't think it ever flew in this or was ever fully completed with the engines wearing this scheme. But it is not a fantasy model. It is an actual aircraft that was made. It would be kind of cool almost if they made the version that I've seen pictures of, which is basically a complete aircraft without engines and with yellow outlines and the windows taped up and everything. That would look kind of cool. As it is, they're releasing it, I think, as a standard model, which it never was. So it's kind of a half fantasy, but it is pretty cool nonetheless. And again, I think I'll put this one in the high flyer. There's definitely an interest factor to the fact that it was never delivered in a scheme, but did wear it. And that scheme looks great on every aircraft anyway. So, no, I'm pretty cool. I like this. It's a good idea. Moving to 787-9s, and these ones, judging by the pictures, several of these are pretty much ready and will be out and at retailers quite soon. First up, we've got an Air France F Hotel Romeo Bravo Hotel is the reg, and usually I'd say negative things about an Air France 787, but again, it turns out that there hasn't been one for quite a while, and it is a fairly major airline aircraft combo. 2020 was the last one, and that was by ngmodels, a very nice model. Before that, there's only been a couple of Geminis on the really old mold and a Phoenix. So the only one which is on a good mold is that NG, and that was 4 years ago. So I think there's definitely room for another Air France 787, and this one again, detachable gear. High flyer. Likewise, their next one is Air New Zealand, ZKNZE. Sounds familiar because it's wearing that all black scheme. There has been versions of this before as well. Again, the NG version, I own that, but again, it was released quite a while ago. It was released back in 2019, so 5 years ago. And the other versions, I think, are even older. Again, there's another old Seam Gemini version, there's an old Phoenix version. So again, there's probably a market for this in the sense that there hasn't been one for 5 years, it's not really easy to find, and it's a popular scheme. So again, I think High Flyer sounds reasonable. And the other one, which looks like it's going to be out soon, is a KLM 7879 PH Bravo Hotel Oscar. And once again, when you look at what has been made for 7879s, there are 4 other releases. 2 are from Phoenix. 1 is from Gemini on a scene mold. So again, they're really old. And the most recent was NG, which was released in 2020. But again, it's not quite the same scheme, because that one and one of the other Phoenixes has this 100 years logo on it, whereas this version that they are putting out now, Aviation400, is the standard scheme without any of that extra bits and bobs. So it's been a long time since there's been a KLM 7879, and so long that it was a seamed mold from Gemini. So I think there's definitely, again, room for this, and I think it deserves High Flyer. There are 3 more 7879s. These ones look like they'll be out a bit later. 2 of them are geminijets Airlines. The first one is B20D1, and that is wearing one of these very attractive geminijets schemes. This scheme is the scheme which has got these kind of falling flower petals on the rear of the fuselage. It's a really nice livery. It has been made by NG and jcwings on very nice molds. It's also been made by Phoenix on their not quite as good mold. So there are quite a few versions of this knocking around, though admittedly it was a few years ago that they were made. I'm less minded to put this one into High Flyer, even though it hasn't been made for a while, because there are more versions of it that are good. So I think I'll put this one into Workhorse. Oh, actually, maybe no. Maybe I will put that one in High Flyer, because again, it's been a long time since it's been made. But I will put the other one into Workhorse, because this one, B209 Romeo, is wearing that Genshin Impact scheme, which NG have released recently, just been announced by jcwings. So there's a lot of these floating around now at this point in time, and yeah, I don't think that even with the detachable gear that this is going to be better than the NG version that I already own. So I'm going to put that one into Workhorse. But again, it should be a nice model. And the last aircraft here, the last 7879 anyway, is Gemin Airlines. Aviation400 released a Gemin 7879 with detachable gear just recently. That was B7838. This one is B1566. Again, this has been made before, this exact aircraft. And the reason that this one has been made before is because it's got this extra little logo on the front of it for the BRICS National Summit. It's not a very big logo at all. It's almost hard to spot just beyond the L1 door. It doesn't do that much extra to the livery, to the extent that I've even got it, even though I do collect Gemin Airlines. So yeah, I think I'll put this one just into Workhorse as well, since they made a Gemin 787 very recently, and this one's very, very similar. And that leaves us just 2 other aircraft to discuss. These are both 787-10, so once again a new mold for Aviation400. And the first one up is again a Boeing house colours scheme. And once again, when you look at what's been made, it's been a long, long time since anybody's bothered with one of these. And interestingly, NG has never made the standard house colours. So we're looking for competition here at a Phoenix release and a jcwings release. Now the jcwings one's super nice, comes flaps up and down. I've got that version already. And the reg here is the same, N528Z Charlie. So I don't really feel the need to get another one. But again, I do think that it's been a long time, and this one should hopefully be pretty cool and interesting with the detachable gear. I'm going to put this one again into High Flyer, I think. And the last model, Vietnam Airlines, the 100th aircraft of theirs, VNA873. Again, there's been a reasonable amount of competition for this. It was made very recently by NG. It's also been made a bit further in time ago by Phoenix. So there are a few of these floating around. Don't particularly... I'm not sure about the colours on this one for the NG version. I have to say the pictures make it look very deep blue, but I don't know. I don't know about this one. It's not thrilling me. There have been a few others. They've been quite good molds. Yeah, not really. Yeah, I'll put this one into Workhorse, I think. But looking at this set overall, you can see that Aviation400 is doing what it does best here is producing a good range of modern wide-body jets in some very striking liveries, with its extra features of beacon lights and detachable landing gear. Some of them are new, some of them are models that have been made before but not for quite a while, and that's quite a good way of releasing, I feel, to satiate market demand rather than have people searching around for models which are hard to find from other brands. So I'm not against them doing that, and as you can see, I think a lot of these releases are worthwhile re-releases as opposed to just re-releases for the sake of it. So yeah, I think it's quite a good set. For me, clearly the 787s are the most interesting models here, especially those 8s. I think they all look really quite cool, and I am intrigued by several of those. But looking through, I'm interested in some of the A350s as well, and definitely some of the larger 787s. The only problem I have is a lot of these are way too modern really for me to collect, and the only ones I'm likely to probably end up getting are the ones that have a Chinese connection. Anyway, that's it from me for this video. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Try and keep you informed about other manufacturers outside of the jcwings and Gemini and NG and Phoenix. Aviation400 definitely are a contender. See you next time, but that's it. Goodbye from yesterday's airlines.